Page 38. Political and other causes hinder the transformation of liquid savings into long-term investment, and the pressure of large and used or unusable money resources poured out in the process of financing the war is substantially unrelieved. Economic expansion and immigration. 21. Leaving aside these uncertainties of the moment, there can be little doubt that, given some central direction, more cooperative effort, and a peaceful political atmosphere, Palestine could be made to provide further opportunities for prosperous settlement, concurrently with an improvement in the living standards of its present population. Some progress towards central direction was made under stress of war, and arrangements are in hand to provide for its continuance. The War Supply Board, under which the capacity of local industry was enlarged and directed to war production, is shortly to be transformed into a full-fledged Department of Commerce and Industry. The War Economic Advisory Council, notwithstanding the withdrawal of the Arab members, is to carry on its consultative work in the shaping and application of official policy. The government of Palestine itself has brought to an advanced stage a program of post-war development covering land reclamation, afforestation and other soil conservation measures, and irrigation. 22. In addition, the expansion of Palestine's economy has engaged a great deal of attention on the part of non-official bodies. Some witnesses have been severely critical of the administration for lack of vision and unreadiness to give positive support to proposals for expansion. Others have expressed the view that monetary independence would clear the way to more vigorous public and private enterprise. Opinion has been almost unanimous as to the cramping effects of Article 18 of the Mandate, which restricts the exercise of tariff-making and bargaining powers in the interests of the mandated territory. Conflicting views are held on the question whether the citrus industry will be able to regain, or even possibly to expand, its pre-war markets. Some see Palestine's future in the establishment of the coastal fringe as the industrial workshop of the Middle East. Some stress the need of an expansion nicely balanced between agriculture and industry. 23. Any forecast of Palestine's long-term prospects must necessarily be viewed against the background of the country's natural resources. These are extremely limited, making Palestine peculiarly dependent on foreign trade for raw materials and supplies of many finished goods. Even the exploitation of the natural asset comprised in a good soil irradiated by long hours of bright sunshine is limited by the availability of. Page 39. Water. Despite an abundant winter rainfall in many parts, Palestine is an arid country. In the words of the Palestine government, there are few countries nowadays which can say that their water resources are of such little concern to their people that legislation to control their use is unnecessary. Yet the government of this arid country has no statutory authority to control the exploitation of its water resources, and no authority even to ascertain the extent of such water resources as exist. 24. The Commission on Palestine Surveys, an American Zionist-financed organization, submitted proposals, conceived on bold and imaginative lines, and worked out in considerable detail by American engineers of the highest standing, for a Jordan Valley Authority. The general design is to bring water from the sources of the Jordan to the fertile Esdraelon and coastal plain, to irrigate the lower Jordan Valley, and to utilize the waters both of the Jordan River and of the Mediterranean Sea for the generation of electric power. It is claimed for the scheme that, whether carried to full completion or adopted in part, it is subdivided into stages each standing on its own merits. It would bring a bountiful supply of water at an economic cost to large areas of fertile land now yielding only one crop a year. Very large sums of money would be required, but these, the committee were informed, would be available from external sources. 25. Such bold long-term planning presupposes willing cooperation, or at least interested neutrality, between all sections of the population and the government. Moreover, it can have little or no bearing on the capacity of Palestine to provide an immediate haven of refuge for homeless Jews from Europe. 26. We have in this immediate context another example of the manner in which Jewish zeal and energy are ready to outrun economic caution of the ordinary Western pattern. Full recognition of the weak points in the Jewish economy and its immediate prospects does not in the least deter the insistence upon providing a home for the homeless. If this should entail an all-round cut in standards of living of the present Jewish population, so be it. There is much to admire in this demonstration of brotherhood carried, if need be, to the point of sacrifice. But it is conceivable that the passionate expansion of an economic structure, upon a dubious basis of natural resources, might lead to overdevelopment on such a scale as to render it top-heavy to the point of collapse. The argument thus returns to the need for systematic improvement of the country's basic resources, for which, as already indicated, orderly progress in an atmosphere of peaceful collaboration is a sine qua non. Page 40. Chapter 5. The Jewish Attitude. 1. The committee heard the Jewish case presented at full length and with voluminous written evidence in 3 series of public hearings in Washington by the American Zionists, in London by the British Zionists, and finally and most massively by the Jewish Agency in Jerusalem. The basic policy advocated was always the same, the so-called Biltmore Program of 1942, with the additional demand that 100,000 certificates for immigration into Palestine should be issued immediately to relieve the distress in Europe. This policy can be summed up in 3 points. 1. That the mandatory should hand over control of immigration to the Jewish Agency. 2. That it should abolish restrictions on the sale of land. And 3. That it should proclaim as its ultimate aim the establishment of a Jewish state as soon as a Jewish majority has been achieved. It should be noted that the demand for a Jewish state goes beyond the obligations of either the Balfour Declaration or the Mandate, and was expressly disowned by the chairman of the Jewish Agency as late as 1932. 2. In all the hearings, although evidence was given by those sections of the Zionist movement which are critical of the Biltmore Program, most of the witnesses took the official Zionist line. The committee also heard the Jewish opponents of Zionism. First, the small groups in America and Britain who advocate assimilation as an alternative to Jewish nationalism. Second, Agudath Israel, an organization of Orthodox Jews which supports unrestricted Jewish immigration into Palestine, while objecting to the secular tendencies of Zionism. And third, representatives of important sections of Middle Eastern Jewry, many of whom fear that their friendly relations with the Arabs are being endangered by political Zionism. 3. As the result of the public hearings and of many private conversations, we came to the conclusion that the Biltmore Program has the support of the overwhelming majority of Zionists. Though many Jews have doubts about the wisdom of formulating these ultimate demands, the program has undoubtedly won the support of the Zionist movement as a whole, chiefly because it expresses the policy of Palestinian Jewry which now plays a leading role in the Jewish Agency. Whether this almost universal full knowledge of the implications of the policy and of support for the demand for a Jewish state is based on the risks involved in carrying it out is, of course, page 41, quite another matter. 4. The position in Palestine itself is somewhat different. Here, where the issue is not the achievement of a remote idea, but is regarded as a matter of life and death for the Jewish nation, the position is naturally more complex. Palestinian Jewry is riddled with party differences. The number of political newspapers and periodicals bears witness to the variety and vitality of this political life, and, apart from pressure exerted on Jews considered to be disloyal to the national home, we found little evidence to support the rumors that it was dangerous to advocate minority views. Of the major political parties, Mapai, the Labour Party, is far the biggest and largely determines the official line. Opposed to the agency's policy are 2 main groups. On the one side stand 2 small but important parties. The conservative Aliyah Hadasha, New Settlers, drawn chiefly from colonists of German and Western European extraction, and has Homer Hatzair, a socialist party which, while demanding the right of unrestricted immigration and land settlement, challenges the concept of the Jewish state and particularly emphasizes the need for cooperation with the Arabs. Has Homer Hatzair, though it did not appear before us, published shortly before we left Jerusalem a striking pamphlet in support of binationalism. Very close to Has Homer Hatzair, but without its socialist ideology, stands Dr. Magnus and his small Ihud group, whose importance is far greater than its numbers. Taken all together, these Palestinian critics of the Biltmore Program certainly do not exceed at the moment 1/4 of the Jewish population in Palestine, but they represent a constructive minority. 5. On the other side stands the revisionist party, numbering some 1% of the Jewish community, and beyond it the various more extreme groups which call for active resistance to the White Paper and participate in and openly support the present terrorist campaign. This wing of Palestinian Jewry derives its inspiration and its methods from the revolutionary traditions of Poland and Eastern Europe. Many of these extremists are boys and girls under 20 of good education, filled with a political fanaticism as self-sacrificing as it is pernicious. 6. The Biltmore program can only be fully understood if it is studied against this background of Palestinian life. Like all political platforms, it is a result of conflicting political pressures, an attempt by the leadership to maintain unity without sacrificing principle. The Jew who lives and works in the national home is deeply aware both of his achievements and of how much. Page 42. More could have been achieved with wholehearted support by the mandatory power. His political outlook is thus a mixture of self-confident pride and bitter frustration. Pride that he has turned the desert and the swamp into a land flowing with milk and honey. Frustration because he is denied opportunity of settlement in 9/10 of that Eretz Israel, which he considers his own by right. Pride that he has disproved the theory that the Jews cannot build a healthy community based on the tilling of the soil. Frustration that the Jew is barred entry to the national home, where that community is now in being. Pride that he is taking part in a bold collective experiment. Frustration because he feels himself hampered by British officials, whom he often regards as less able than himself. Pride because in Palestine he feels himself at last a free member of a free community. Frustration because he lives not under a freely elected government, but under an autocratic if humane regime. 7. The main complaint of the Jews of Palestine is that, since the White Paper of 1930, the mandatory power has slowed up the development of the national home in order to placate Arab opposition. The sudden rise of immigration after the Nazi seizure of power had as its direct result the 3.5 years of Arab revolt, during which the Jew had to train himself for self-defense, and to accustom himself to the life of a pioneer in an armed stockade. The high barbed wire and the watchtowers, manned by the settlement police day and night, strike the eye of the visitor as he approaches every collective colony. They are an outward symbol of the new attitude to life and politics, which developed among the Palestinian Jews between 1936 and 1938. As a Jewish settler said to a member of the committee, "We are the vanguard of a great army, defending the advanced positions until the reinforcements arrive from Europe." 8. The Jews in Palestine are convinced that Arab violence paid. Throughout the Arab Rising, the Jews in the national home, despite every provocation, obeyed the orders of their leaders and exercised a remarkable self-discipline. They shot, but only in self-defense. They rarely took reprisals on the Arab population. They state bitterly that the reward for this restraint was the Conference and the White Paper of 1939. The mandatory power, they argue, yielded to force, cut down immigration, and thus caused the death of thousands of Jews in Hitler's gas chambers. The Arabs, who had recourse to violence, received substantial concessions, while the Jews who had put their faith in the mandatory were compelled to accept what they regard as a violation of the spirit and the letter of the mandate. 9. An immediate result of the success of Arab terrorism was the beginning of Jewish terrorism and, even more sig. Page 43. Significant, a closing of the ranks, a tightening of the discipline, and a general militarization of Jewish life in Palestine. The agency became the political headquarters of a citizen army which felt that at any moment it might have to fight for its very existence. Deprived, as he believed, both of his natural and of his legal rights, the Palestinian Jew began to lose faith in the mandatory power. The dangerous belief was spread that not patience but violence was needed to achieve justice. The position of the moderates who urged self-restraint and a reliance on Britain's pledged word was progressively undermined. The position of the extremists eager to borrow a leaf from the Arab copybook was progressively strengthened. 10. Then came the war. Apart from a small group of terrorists, the Jewish community gave more solid support than the Palestinian Arabs to the British war effort. But when the immediate Middle Eastern danger was removed, the old struggle between the moderates and the extremists began again, heightened to an almost unendurable tension by the news from Europe, and by such tragedies as the Struma incident. During the war, tens of thousands of Jews learned to fight, either in the British Army or in the Palestine Home Guard. They were with Britain in the fight against fascism. They were against Britain in the struggle against the White Paper, which they now felt was not only unjust, but totally inhuman as preventing the escape to Palestine of men, women, and children in imminent danger of death in Nazi Germany and Nazi-controlled Europe. When the war ended and the Labour government came to power, the White Paper still remained in force. The Jews, who had expected an immediate fulfillment by a Labour government of the Labour Party program with regard to Zionism, felt a sense of outrage when no change of policy occurred. The bitterness reached a new peak of intensity, and the position of the moderates became almost impossible. The Jewish Agency frankly stated in public hearing that, after VE Day, it was quite futile for it to attempt to cooperate with the mandatory in suppressing illegal activity. 11. Any decision on the future of Palestine will be futile and unrealistic unless it is made in full cognizance of the political tension among the Jews in Palestine and the reasons for it. Both in evidence given in public hearings, and in numerous private conversations with leading politicians, and with ordinary citizens, we were repeatedly advised that the maintenance by the mandatory of its present policy could only lead to a state of war, in which the extremists would have the passive support of almost the whole Jewish population, and the moderates would be swept from the key positions. Page 44, which they still hold. To use the words of one Jewish leader, our present crisis in Europe and Palestine is felt by all of us to be our Dunkirk. Page 45, Chapter 6, The Arab Attitude. 1. The committee heard a brief presentation of the Arab case in Washington, statements made in London by delegates from the Arab states to the United Nations, a fuller statement from the Secretary General and other representatives of the Arab League in Cairo, and evidence given on behalf of the Arab Higher Committee and the Arab Office in Jerusalem. In addition, subcommittees visited Baghdad, Riyadh, Damascus, Beirut, and Amman, where they were informed of the views of governments and of unofficial spokesmen. 2. Stripped to the bare essentials, the Arab case is based upon the fact that Palestine is a country which the Arabs have occupied for more than 1,000 years, and a denial of the Jewish historical claims to Palestine. In issuing the Balfour Declaration, the Arabs maintain the British government were giving away something that did not belong to Britain, and they have consistently argued that the mandate conflicted with the Covenant of the League of Nations, from which it derived its authority. The Arabs deny that the part played by the British in freeing them from the Turks gave Great Britain a right to dispose of their country. Indeed, they assert that Turkish was preferable to British rule, if the latter involves their eventual subjection to the Jews. They consider the mandate a violation of their right of self-determination since it is forcing upon them an immigration, which they do not desire and will not tolerate an invasion of Palestine by the Jews. We have not felt it necessary to enter into the historical arguments based upon undertakings given by the British government, to the Sharif Hussein of Mecca and others during the last war, and interpreted by the Arabs as promising among other things that Palestine would become an independent Arab country. These undertakings, the most important of which preceded the Balfour Declaration, form an essential part of the Arab case and were examined by an Anglo-Arab committee in London in February 1939. The report of this committee, containing statements of both the Arab and the British point of view, is to be found in British Command Paper No. 5974. The documents under examination were printed at the same time in Command Papers Nos. 5957 and 5964, all of 1939. Page 46. 3. The Arabs of Palestine point out that all the surrounding Arab states have now been granted independence. They argue that they are just as advanced as are the citizens of the nearby states, and they demand independence for Palestine now. The promises which have been made to them in the name of Great Britain, and the assurances concerning Palestine given to Arab leaders by Presidents Roosevelt and Truman, have been understood by the Arabs of Palestine as a recognition of the principle that they should enjoy the same rights as those enjoyed by the neighboring countries. Christian Arabs unite with Muslims in all of these contentions. They demand that their independence should be recognized at once, and they would like Palestine as a self-governing country to join the Arab League. 4. The Arabs attach the highest importance to the fulfillment of the promises made by the British government in the White Paper of 1939. King Abdul Aziz ibn Saud, when he spoke with 3 members of the committee at Riyadh, made frequent reference both to these promises and to the assurances given him by the late President Roosevelt at their meeting in February 1945. His Majesty made clear the strain which would be placed upon Arab friendship with Great Britain and the United States by any policy which Arabs regarded as a betrayal of these pledges. The same warning was repeated by an Arab witness in Jerusalem, who said that Zionism for the Arabs has become a test of Western intentions. 5. The suggestion that self-government should be withheld from Palestine until the Jews have acquired a majority seems outrageous to the Arabs. They wish to be masters in their own house. The Arabs were opposed to the idea of a Jewish national home, even before the Biltmore program and the demand for a Jewish state. Needless to say, however, Their opposition has become more intense and more bitter since that program was adopted. 6. The Arabs maintain that they have never been anti-Semitic. Indeed, they are Semites themselves. Arab spokesmen profess the greatest sympathy for the persecuted Jews of Europe, but they point out that they have not been responsible for this persecution, and that it is not just that they should be compelled to atone for the sins of Western peoples by accepting into their country hundreds of thousands of victims of European antisemitism. Some Arabs even declare that they might be willing to do their share in providing for refugees on a quota basis if the United States, the British Commonwealth, and other Western countries would do the same. Page 47. 7. The Peel Commission took the view that the enterprise of the Jews in agriculture and industry had brought large, if indirect, benefits to the Arabs in raising their standard of living. Though a very large part of the Jewish purchases of land has been made from absentee landlords, many of them living outside Palestine, it is probable that many Arab farmers who have sold part of their land to the Jews have been able to make use of the money to improve the cultivation of their remaining holdings. The improvement of health conditions in many parts of the country, while due in part to the activities of government, and in part to the efforts of the Arabs themselves, has undoubtedly been assisted by the work of the Jewish settlers. It is also argued that the Jewish population has conferred substantial indirect benefits on the Arabs through its contribution to the public revenue. On the other hand, the Arabs contend that such improvement as there may have been in their standard of living is attributable solely to their own efforts, perhaps with a measure of aid at some points from the administration. They assert that at least equal improvements have occurred in other Arab countries, and that the action taken by the government to assist Jewish industry and agriculture has reacted unfavorably on the Arabs. Import duties for the protection of Jewish industries, for example, are said to have confronted Arab consumers with the necessity of buying high-priced local products in place of cheaper imported goods. In any event, the Arabs declare that, if they must choose between freedom and material improvement, they prefer freedom. 8. In exasperation at the disregard of their objection to Jewish immigration, the Arabs of Palestine have repeatedly risen in revolt. A substantial number of them still declare their allegiance to the exiled Mufti of Jerusalem and are satisfied with his policies. In the Second World War, Palestinian Arabs were on the whole spiritually neutral, as Jamal Effendi el-Husseini stated in his evidence before the committee. The Grand Mufti in Germany was working for the interests not of the English who were warring with the Germans, but for the interests of his people who had no direct interest, at least, in the controversy. They felt that it was not their war and that the Mufti was right in taking such steps, as he could to do the best for Palestine whoever might be victorious. 9. The White Paper of 1939 and the drastic limitation of Jewish immigration and of land sales to Jews which followed met the Arab view only in part. The Arabs would have gone much further. The demands voiced by their leaders are for immediate independence, for the final cessation of Jewish immigration, and for the prohibition of all land sales by Arabs to Jews.